Hello, my name is Daniel Sweetser, and I'm reading this morning from my novel, Hope Starts Small. I'm going to be reading Chapter 6, Part 2, Grandpa. When Frank and Constance were considering getting married, they tried to work out a plan that would fit with both of them still being in school and no substantial income. The plan they settled on was that they would use student loans to cover their expenses for their first year of marriage, allowing them to finish school, and then they would hopefully find work. And as was customary for Frank, he then called his dad. His dad was the clear thinker, the one Frank would call when he wanted to find out whether a plan was reasonable. And when Frank called his dad and said they wanted to fund their first year of marriage with loans, much to Frank's surprise, his dad said it made sense. It was uncharacteristic, and it was enough to convince Frank that it was the right way to go. Conversations like this would happen again and again. Whenever Frank wasn't sure about something, he would call his dad, and his dad would provide a precise assessment of the situation. Frank remembered once when he was considering a job offer with a company, and the potential was great, but it didn't fit with a hope he had to do some part-time church work. He called his dad, and Grandpa listened and told Frank that it didn't make sense to take the job. So Frank didn't take it, and in the end it proved to be the right thing to do. This was often the role Grandpa played in Frank's life. He was the solid one, the guide. And Frank was grateful. He knew he wasn't always sensible. He was too inclined to dream and then pursue it despite clear warnings. But this clarity in his dad came at a cost. Grandpa was not the one to go to for comfort. He would rarely cry, and if he did, it was usually not because he was sad. And he would rarely yell, but if he did, it would usually be about politics. Perhaps this is why Frank would go to him with questions, because he was never particularly concerned that his dad would let emotions cloud his judgment. Frank was a very different creature. He took more after his mom. He was deeply feeling most of the time. He would get caught up in his emotions, and they would drive what he did. He was the intuitive one, the wild and unexpected one. And his dad was the foil to this. He was so other than Frank, and as a result, he could provide a perspective that Frank trusted implicitly. There were, of course, times that Frank wanted something different from his dad. One of the clearest examples of this was when Frank shared his dream of starting the blueberry farm. He was sitting in the living room in the house in town with his mom and dad, and he shared his dream to become a farmer of sorts. He went into detail about the beauty and wonder of the blueberry bush and how it had captured his affections. At the time, his parents had shared little in response, perhaps bewildered by this sudden news and unfamiliar pursuit. Later that night, Frank got a call from them in which they said that while they were not particularly interested in his goal of trying to start a blueberry farm, they realized that a move at this moment could give the family an opportunity to get out of debt for good. And so they were willing to help, but not for the reasons that Frank had hoped. This was hard for Frank to accept. He had held out his heart to them, this dream of a farm, and they had responded kindly, but factually and practically. What he had really wanted was for them to share in the excitement, to share in the dream, and that didn't happen. This experience was not uncommon. Frank often reached out to his dad because he needed help reading the proverbial map on the way to some beautiful destination, and his dad would eagerly help him. Upon reaching the destination, Frank would begin to revel in the view, and he desperately wanted his dad to do the same. But he would look over and see that his dad was still studying the map. All right, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day.